When people ask me what my favorite flavor of ice cream is, I often say cookies and cream. That's because in my mind, it's the closest flavor to vanilla without actually being vanilla, because vanilla is considered plain or too vanilla. So cookies and cream is a good substitute to make me sound like I have a bit more of a flavor profile than just plain old vanilla. But I'm not the only one who finds vanilla popular. In fact, the majority of the population, 29% of the American population, prefer vanilla as their go-to flavor of ice cream. And there's a theory out there as to why we like vanilla that Freud himself could have written.
Before we get into that, let's shed some light on vanilla. It begins as a flower which only opens one day every year, and if you fail to pollinate that flower, it dies, and no vanilla bean is produced, which leads to a lot of crying vanilla lovers. Up until the 19th century, vanilla orchids could only be pollinated by a specific type of Mexican bee called Melipona. As demand rose for vanilla, more attempts to industrialize the pollination process were made, but to no avail. Then a Madagascar slave, Edmund Albius, developed a way to manually pollinate the vanilla orchid using a sliver of wood or a needle. And believe it or not, this is how vanilla orchids are painstakingly pollinated today, flower by flower. But the work doesn't end here. It could take almost a year before a vanilla pod is ready for use because the bean must ripen and darken before it can be harvested, then age before use, and failure is frequent at any of these stages. Once the impact of vanilla on baking was evident, the race to develop artificial vanilla flavoring was on. Vanillin is the most recognizable flavor from vanilla's profile, even though it only accounts for about 2.5% of vanilla bean pod flavor, which has between 250 to 500 different flavor and fragrance components. Vanillin can be found in wood, a commonly and easily harvested substance compared to true vanilla and much cheaper as well. If you get your hands on vanillin, you're halfway to making a decent vanilla knockoff. The rest comes down to mimicking vanilla's flavor profile, but it's still nowhere near the real deal. So if you're munching on something vanilla flavored, like ice cream, chances are it's vanillin. Believe it or not, chocolate lovers, but vanilla is extremely important to the flavor profile of chocolate. It's a proprietary part of most chocolate recipes because it rounds off the taste by adding creaminess, balancing sweetness, and masking acidity. Vanilla is produced in only a few regions in the tropics. The most sought after vanilla is bourbon vanilla, which is buttery and fruity, stemming from the French-occupied island of Réunion. The problem with vanilla is that it's everywhere. It's one of the most common flavors, and that's what gives it a bad rep. But again, the vanilla we experience in most products isn't vanilla at all.
Just to put vanilla's price evolution into perspective, in the mid-1990s it was about $9 per pound. Then with droughts, temperature changes and global warming, and overall increase of demand, vanilla is now $115 per pound.
In an article by Joe Kindlin from the University of Pittsburgh posted on Spoon University, our almost universal love of vanilla can be considered a feat of evolution. We love fatty, high-caloric foods because our caveman brethren gorged on this stuff to survive long winters. This survival instinct holds a spot in our brain, as does our affinity for vanilla, which can be traced back to the milk our main caregivers fed us as babies. Our mother's breast milk was a source for survival throughout our infancy, and scientists have discovered breast milk shares a lot of scents and flavor notes with vanilla, which could explain why it's universally popular.
So it seems like after all this, vanilla, or vanillin, since it's found in so many different products, is anything but plain. And so maybe I'll feel less guilty saying that vanilla is my favorite flavor now, and I won't have to use the lie of cookies and cream any further.